I'd like to introduce our next presenters. Dan Rippey is Director of Engineering in the One Commercial Partner Organization at Microsoft, where he has worked for 12 years. Prior to this, Dan held engineering roles at Dell EMC and MIT and served in the US Army Reserves for almost 14 years. Amit Sinha is Chief Customer Officer at WorkSpan. Amit is known for his passion of all things marketing, user experience, and technology. Before WorkSpan, Amit was with SAP for more than a decade in various marketing leadership roles. And speaking today, and what I think wins for the longest title of any session in ASAP history is how the Microsoft Partner-to-Partner program is disrupting the way technology companies are leveraging the power of ecosystems for business growth, customer acquisitions, and gaining a competitive advantage. Please welcome Dan Rippey and Amit Sinha.
Hello. Thank you, Brooke. This is awesome to be here. Why don't I share my screen and kick this off, and we can go from there. Welcome to the session, folks. This is Amit here. I'll kick this off together with Dan. You got our bios and introduction very quickly here. I am a founder and chief customer officer here at WorkSpan. A little bit more about my role. I work with customers who are essentially alliance managers, channel managers, ecosystem leaders, who are utilizing the WorkSpan network to work more effectively, more collaboratively, especially in this post-COVID, digitally charged, collaboration-enabled world, to work with one another to do joint planning and joint, execution of their sales plans, their marketing plans, their joint innovation. So that's my role. I'm in a customer-facing role, serving the alliance executives. Dan, do you want to give a quick overview of what you do at Microsoft as well?
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, Amit. Hey, everybody. Dan Rippey. Thanks for being here. I know that these sessions, consuming this content, is a significant commitment of your time. So we really appreciate having you all on board and sticking with us through these days from wherever safe part of the world you happen to be dialing in from. My name is Dan Rippey. I'm currently accountable for the experience at Microsoft across partner.microsoft.com. That is the enrollment engine that it brings new organizations into Microsoft as a partner and then fulfills the benefits and commitments that we make back to those companies. So we'll talk. Amit and I will talk to you today about a joint opportunity that our respective organizations are undergoing and the vision of partner-to-partner collaboration and co-sell of the future. Thanks, Amit.
Thanks, Dan. So a brief word about why do we need to work in this format, right? So WorkSpan is a provider of an ecosystem cloud. What it means is like LinkedIn that we are very used to. We join a network like LinkedIn, we connect as professionals with one another, and then we are open for collaboration of exchanging ideas. But there was a dearth of an ecosystem, a connected network in the alliance space. So WorkSpan stepped in and in 2014 created the first ever network for alliance professionals to work with one another in the context of their roles in their companies. So that means an alliance manager in company one can reach out to an alliance manager in company two over our network to participate in joint selling, joint marketing, joint solutioning exercises so that the work of an alliance manager can be digitized and hence scaled in a much better way. So if you can close your eyes and imagine a unified network where not only these companies are members of this network, but those companies with their single sign-on have their employees, their alliance managers as part of this network. So a couple of quick props. Intel was our first customer, then SAP, and they started initially with a joint marketing initiative. Think of it as Intel Inside powering the next generation data center solution. So that one connection got established across the network to connect over 250 marketeers at SAP with 50 plus marketeers at Intel. That was program number one way back in 2014. But then as more modules came online, SAP, for example, started working with GSI partners on WorkSpan, bringing in Accenture, Wipro, Infosys, companies of that caliber onto the WorkSpan network so that they, instead of working on marketing activities alone, they can actually collaborate on joint selling, because a lot of GSI activities, global SI activities are collaborative opportunities that these companies pursue to jointly address modern digital transformation needs that their clients may have. And as a result, the network started to get populated more and more. And as different kinds of selling paradigms and alliance paradigms have come across, so for example, it was not just about joint selling. If you think of OEM partners, hardware partners, edge partners, network partners, telecom providers, different kinds and classes of companies started joining the WorkSpan network. And as a result, this has become more densely populated, and eventually it became multi-partner. And multi-partner is really interesting, and Dan will cover more, from a use case perspective. It's not just mutual between one company and the other on a network like this. So imagine on a LinkedIn conversation, let's say a friend of yours asks you and says, hey, do you happen to know Dan at Microsoft? And I see a job posting here at Microsoft, and can you introduce me to Dan? So what you do is you just simply open a direct message line, and three of you are now conversing and say, hey, Dan, meet my good friend Scott. I highly recommend Scott for this role. And then Dan says, hey, happy to consider this. That's an example of a network in action. Similarly here, if multiple companies actually come together on a network and drive action, this is exactly what the intent for WorkSpan is. So let's peel a layer deeper into what WorkSpan does. It does three essential things. One is it digitizes collaboration, as I mentioned. So as alliance managers can be part of companies, they log in, they sign in with their company identity, which is verified. And once they come in here, they can create a partner program or new sets of joint initiatives with a network of alliance partners. And then it's not very complicated in terms of a portal or things where invitations are hard. In this case, you simply invite another person through an email, and the person can join in, and then you start working. It feels much more like collaborating on Office 365, for example, except that the objects you're collaborating on is not a Word document or an Excel file, but it is business relevant documents such as an opportunity or a solution or a marketing activity. Second piece is really important. As you can imagine, working in an alliance context, ad hoc processes such as sharing with personal productivity tools is pretty well done in the world today. But what is not well done is actually a joint workflow, a common workflow that you will use to move work forward. So WorkSpan is a provider of that way of packaged applications where you can do, for example, in a joint sales plan in WorkSpan, you can create goals and metrics. You can take it from planning to execution as a next step. And in execution, you can have workflows for pipeline management, workflows for marketing management, or workflows for joint co-innovation of solution with your partner network. So these digital processes allow every member of your company in the alliance management function to work with their alliance counterparts, but along well-agreed industry benchmark processes. And of course, you can tweak these processes, but largely these processes are the standard across the network. And lastly, this piece is really, really important, which is digitized data sharing. So as you can imagine on a network like this, these employees from various companies in alliance management roles, they come in here, but they not only come in with their intent and their ability to collaborate, they also have a data model behind them, which means that their own companies may classify opportunities in a certain way, that this opportunity is for enterprise versus mid-market or in a certain region or for certain products. So there's a data model behind every single company's participation. And some parts of that data model is private, some part is competitive, some part can be shared. So WorkSpan provides that data sharing layer where every company creates a policy on the network as to what they share securely, privately, or in an open format with their network. And this creates this security layer that allows every alliance manager to be like, a peace of mind that when they securely share an opportunity on our WorkSpan network, that only the fields that their legal teams and their compliance office has cleared. For example, with Microsoft, we had to clear the Microsoft CILA processes, which really take care of the compliance with the partner network. So think of this as a modern partnering framework where you are digitally collaborating on joint processes using shared data. And this is really literally the holy grail of how partnering in this modern context is working. And if you think of a while back, even 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of partnering was actually meeting people. It was about beer and over drinks or going to each other's offices or meeting in events. And as these things get challenged, the idea here is that can these processes be moved over electronically over a shared network so that they can scale even in these COVID times. So there are different flavors of partner programs that WorkSpan runs today. We are, of course, going to deep dive with Dan on focused partner communities around partner-to-partner engagement. So I leave that first pillar to Dan to kind of deep dive in the next few slides. Let me briefly set these other 4 up so that in case you have these needs, you can reach out to us and talk to us about it. So Cisco is a great example. In these COVID times, they've actually launched a business resiliency fund. They have multiple initiatives such as big bets, digitize ecosystem ACEs, these kinds of programs. What they do is they create joint solutions with their alliances. So a Cisco and an alliance partner would create a joint solution, but then they use the shared channel to actually take it out to market, and then provide incentives or measure those activities on the WorkSpan network. So this is a great example of how they've been able to be digitally resilient during these times with great programs. Second example is Accenture. Accenture uses WorkSpan for their top 5 partnerships. These are examples of Accenture HPE, Accenture Dell, Accenture Google relationship, Accenture SAP relationship. The idea here is that these companies are coming together to collaborate on what new solution plays they need to launch, especially in these times. Old solutions are not working, they need to package new ones, and WorkSpan becomes a place where new solutions get packaged. And this is very important. These, especially Accenture, is in a lot of early digital transformation initiatives, and they call this pre-stage 0 opportunities. Think of this as pre-pipeline, where people get together and say, it would be a good idea if we digitally transformed X. They've not yet figured out the other partners or the other solution really, but at this point, early stage collaboration really kicks in and creates net new opportunities for everybody. The next one is a co-sell program. This is the SAP GSSP program. SAP also runs their OEM program through this model, and also their marketplace focused endorsed applications as well in terms of a joint co-selling workflow on WorkSpan. The idea here is very simple. My CRM has a lot of opportunities. My AEs are working on them, but I'd like the partners' help in actually getting to the joint value proposition with the customer so that there is reduced risk, reduced cost, and all those benefits that come with jointly selling these. And what we have noticed here is because of collaboration, actually win rates go up the roof. So whenever 2 good partners align and they execute together, the win rate is much higher than a traditional enterprise rate. And the other coincidental benchmark we found was in the SAP case, they were able to shave 9 business days from a regular enterprise sales cycle that is typically 9 months long. So pretty good improvement in terms of deal cycle time, as well as win rates because of collaboration here. And lastly, another use case on the MDF side, this is very interesting. If folks who have participated in joint funds management, like a market development fund or a strategic fund initiative, you guys would know this. Typically, a fund is just given away to a channel partner ecosystem. In this case, there's typically a distribution and money outflow. But because we are sitting on top of a network like WorkSpan, we can not only give money, we can also receive money on the network. And the other interesting thing is, just as you would do on a Venmo or a PayPal, two folks can actually combine their funds and then actually give it to a shared channel network. So in this case, what Intel and VMware do is they have a joint channel ecosystem outside, and it's a shared channel. So VMware and Intel combine their funds and offer it to shared partners who are working on Intel architecture, but on VMware-related technologies. So again, a network in action to co-fund channel deployments so that the channel can actually take the innovation and deploy it much faster, where you can fund POCs and things like that. I'll end with this and hand the baton to Dan. The idea here is, if you think of alliance management as a function where it is usually mutual, of course, we have to do the mutual, the one-on-one, co-sell, co-partner, co-innovate, co-market initiative. But where the ball is actually shifting to is towards an ecosystem. It's actually becoming multi-partner. With that cue, let me hand it off to Dan to really talk about the Microsoft partner-to-partner program and how it began, and what kind of experiments he ran and where he's headed next. Dan?
That's great. Thank you, Amit. Excellent tee up. And if you don't mind, I'll have you advance. I'll just give you a cue to advance these forward as we go through. Thanks everybody again for the time. I really appreciate this and really appreciate your partnership with ASAP and hanging on through the conference here. I'm going to focus on 3 areas today. I'm going to talk briefly on where we came from as a channel ecosystem at Microsoft. I am going to also talk about where we've been in the last 5 or 10 years, of what trends have we noticed in the ecosystem that are starting to evolve the thinking on where we need to go, and how have we formulated a perspective based on feedback from our partners on where the industry should be led. And then I'll close and spend most of the time actually orienting content to where are we going, what does it mean for our partners in this relationship between Microsoft and WorkSpan, and what does it mean when we create a partner-led collaboration opportunity that where we deploy a set of capabilities to the ecosystem and then really effectively get out of the way and let amazing and magical things happen on their own. I'm going to, if you think about the history of Microsoft in the 20 or 30 years, recent history of selling products and services, Microsoft's initial foundation was really founded in a series of products with a focus on direct sales and a channel of partners to support that ecosystem. Within the last 10 years, we had to transition that big time. We've transitioned our value from to Azure and the Office 365 suite, and really turned our products into a platform. And that focus has shifted from our organization, our internal sales motion, from partner attached sales, where we're incentivizing our sales team to bring a partner in on the deals, really to solution based selling and collaborative selling. And so when you think about the motions that Microsoft has enabled with the tools that many of our partners are familiar with, of Microsoft would be engaging with a customer and a sales opportunity, and they would say, you know what, this would be stronger if I brought a partner in on this deal, either for the initial structure of the deal or for the ongoing sustainment of the deal. We would basically just pick a partner and we'd say, hey, we think this is the best partner to work with this customer and with Microsoft on this engagement request. Let's start working together and trying to find an opportunity where we can collaborate. That's changed. And so that's changed significantly in the last decade, is that now it's about solution-based selling and collaborative selling. The feedback that we get from our partner ecosystem and from our customer ecosystem is that don't sell me the capabilities of an organization, sell me the capabilities of a tangible piece of intellectual property or service offering that I can quickly integrate to overcome business challenges and business need. And so where we've gone as a company in the last really 3 to 4 years is starting to focus our sales team on solution-based selling. And so through that, it's not really about what Microsoft has built, right? That's a given, as many of those goods have become commoditized. It's about the valuable service offerings that can be constructed on top of that platform. And that is mostly done by our partner ecosystem. And so when Satya makes bold statements on stage, like we've always been a partner-led company and we will always be a partner-led company, that statement still very much rings true. The difference is the way we've leveraged our partner ecosystem 10 or 20 years ago is very, very different from the way we will be leveraging our partners ecosystem in the future. And most of that success hinges on partner-to-partner collaboration and things that will come out of that ecosystem naturally as relationships evolve between organizations. Amit, if you could push the slide forward, that'd be great. So this model really predicates itself on a couple of things. The motion that we are pursuing at Microsoft is predicated on the ability to hydrate a marketplace with intellectual property and service offerings that solve our customers' needs. We do this through a direct channel in Microsoft's AppSource and Azure marketplaces. We do this through an indirect channel with our cloud solution providers, and we do this through a seller channel of cooperative selling opportunities between Microsoft's sales team and our partners. But there's a gap that emerges out of this, and then the feedback that we receive is that Microsoft really has put an appropriate amount of investment into the channel for the ability of a specific partner to work with a specific seller, either on a managed or unmanaged customer opportunity. Those joint engagements go through the referrals and co-sell capabilities that have now been moved into Partner Center. And most of our partners are fairly familiar with that experience, and they understand, hey, if I want to do business with Microsoft, there's a conduit to do that. And Microsoft has their internal sales CRM systems, and those connect through a conduit in a Partner Center so that our partners can collaborate with our sellers and they can close collaborative book of business together and execute deal registration against won opportunities. But there's a gap, and that gap is where the ecosystem has evolved in P2P relationships and the need to embrace multi-party collaboration, not only building new solution offerings, but also in working joint sales engagements and success opportunities. And so that's what we strive to achieve in this opportunity with WorkSpan, not by putting Microsoft in the center of the conversation, really by Microsoft enabling a platform that encourages our partners to connect with each other. And in some cases, Microsoft just gets out of the way and lets the magic happen when two organizations that have built collaborative opportunities have the ability to succeed in market. In certain circumstances, we expect a partner or multiple partners would ask Microsoft to come and collaborate on a deal or collaborate on the production of new intellectual property or advice and guidance on a new service opportunity. But really, this puts the partners at the center of the conversation. And Microsoft becomes an ancillary solution provider that is enabled this platform with WorkSpan for our partners to connect with each other, and in some cases to have a role at the table for those discussions. Slide, please. And so through this, we envision our partners being able to establish their own communities where they can bring together other organizations to the table for focused discussions in certain solution areas where market opportunity exists. In some cases, we expect, again, this ecosystem will invite Microsoft to come to the table, but that really becomes the partner's discretion in the relationship, and to see whether Microsoft can add value in that discussion, or whether, let's say, as an example, an ISV and a system integrator already fully understand how to succeed. Maybe the ISV has built their technology stack on top of Azure, but what they're really looking for is strategic relationships with an SI community that can deploy, support, and embrace the ecosystem of their software as it gets rolled out globally. So this puts the partner at the front. This puts the partner in the lead with leadership that starts in the relationships that are built here with WorkSpan. What we are observing is an emerging trend where ISVs now want to focus on what they're good at, right? Building great tech and being able to leverage a global SI community for custom code and integration, deployment, and production support. And so we see ISVs really wanting to maintain their focus in-house on the product and building out a product that is enticing for the market, a product that solves real world customer need, and a product that can be sold collaboratively through SIs across the planet. This obviously challenges our direct marketplace motions, but it fully embraces relationships where the SI and an ISV need to be able to connect directly and just work together directly. They may ask Microsoft for guidance or advice at certain points in the relationship. They may leverage investable dollars that Microsoft has made available for a certain solution area. They may leverage cloud solution architects that Microsoft can provide to help close those deals successfully or build new tech successfully. But really, at the end of the day, we are not successful without, number one, ISVs building amazing technologies on top of our stack, and number two, SIs being prepared to deploy and support that technology around the world. We're also now seeing the introduction of OEMs and IoT edge device providers, where kind of this beautiful symbiotic relationship between intelligent software and great hardware comes together. We see it really form together as a powerful DNA strand where the ISV, the SI, and the OEM can all come together in a multi-party relationship, and in some cases bring Microsoft. Now you have a 3 or 4 party ecosystem where these companies are working together to be able to, number one, envision new engagements and opportunities based on emerging market trends, and number two, and more importantly, successfully close deals. Push one more slide forward for me. And so I'll close on a brief snapshot of our journey ahead, specifically with SAP Embrace and Adobe. The orientation here pivots a heavy bias on solution-based cooperative selling through joint sales engagements, kind of as you would imagine with companies of this size and scope. But what we're finding is that this ecosystem actually becomes much bigger than that. The ISV, the SI, and in some cases I alluded to the OEM and IoT edge device providers, the ability to envision the integration and deployment opportunities of new tech has started to manifest itself here. And so where a lot of these ecosystems, especially for the big partners, start with discussions heavy on sales for a pipeline of solutions that are already very mature, we're finding in that, and the organizations are coming together and saying, you know what, if we had modified this product or if we had an additional product offering that we could have brought in on this deal, it would have been that much stronger. And they start to pull the ecosystem and say, well, did somebody already build this? And we could just create a partnership with them and bring them in this multi-party P2P workspace that we have. Or is this a potential new opportunity for one of the existing consumers of the ecosystem? And so what we see here is this kind of this catalyst of a relationship that takes off and transitions from sales way down into the development pipeline and trying to get ahead of the business cycle to forecast what's coming based on the demand of what's here today. And so many of these engagements are happening without Microsoft needing to lead the discussion, which is exactly what our intent is in the development and support of this ecosystem. And we're excited to see this type of exponential growth and what can happen when a platform company deploys capabilities and then gets out of the way. and the industry takes over, letting the orientation and conversation really shift. And that conversation happens with our partners at the center of the table, and Microsoft, in some cases, kind of on the ancillary periphery around the corner. So with that, I wanted to thank Amit and his team for supporting this. I wanted to announce that these capabilities will be lighting up for our partners next year. We'll be talking about this a bit at our partner conference next month. And we've seen really great results coming from the pilots that we've started with WorkSpan. And as we start to enable these capabilities for the totality of Microsoft's partner ecosystem, we expect really good things ahead. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, and I want to also summarize, as we took the first P2P pilot with Microsoft and the learnings that we got, Dan, you talked about how this was successful. There were also some very good learnings that came out of it. One was that these communities need to be focused because it gives the community a purpose towards something. So as a result, there are more purposeful communities of partners being formed around the Microsoft ecosystem. So I just wanted to add that one quick point of feedback. With that, Brooke, I do want to take this, and I have a couple of thoughts as well that I could share if you want.
Fantastic. So we did have a few questions come in. Thank you so much for your session. One of the questions is, what channel, alliance, or partnership management skills are necessary to be successful in P2P programs? And can the skills needed for more traditional programs translate to the management of the ecosystem?
Yeah, I'll take a stab, and Dan, I'll let you elaborate given your practical experience in this matter. So one is definitely when you look at mutual alliances, there's a lot of pre-planning around the alliance, and it is a little bit more heavy with more planning. But what I've noticed with partner-to-partner connections is a lot more dynamic. So what happens is let's say you are in a customer context and you discover that you may need a solution from that other partner. And by the way, from the tool perspective, what we do is we recommend a solution with a different partner. So in that case, the matchmaking happens on the fly. So these partnerships become dynamic. So I think one of the key requirements then is, as opposed to well thought out, well structured, pre-planned large alliances that work with one another, there's a lot of planning and execution steps that go along. This seems a lot more dynamic. So being open to that and having skill sets for speed as opposed to perfectness, and then through this process, kind of have the open mind to actually consider innovations across, and then have a process to actually then engage and kind of take it to the next level. That I feel is the biggest change in terms of people and their skills required. Dan?
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's really putting your startup hat back on. And that's really hard to do for midsize and enterprise corporations, because you've gained a position in the market that enables you a certain level of luxury in the way you structure deals and do business with other organizations. But the difference is, when your organization was small, you hustled, right? You went out, you met other organizations, you tried to figure out, what did they do? What did you do? Were you competitors? Were you collaborators? How were you going to start to structure the relationships that you invested in? And I think at all tiers of the ecosystem, it's putting that hat back on and opening yourself up for that narrative and thinking about, how would I, we've seen the ecosystem. Microsoft is a great example of this, right? We've seen the ecosystem evolve in companies that were 100% competitors with us a decade ago, now have strategic relationships with us in certain core functional areas, because we are better together through areas where our products and services augment each other in a really symbiotic way. And so I think it's especially for the mid-size and enterprise organizations that are thinking about how would they embrace this, of put your startup hat back on and be open to the conversation and hustle, get ready, get out and forge new relationships, have open and uncomfortable dialogues about what your organizations do and what your organizations, where your organizations have gaps, where you're seeking other capabilities in the market to fulfill those for things you don't need to build organically, and open the discussion. And I think you'll be really pleased with the result.
Great, thank you. So someone is asking the classic question, how do companies in the ecosystem play nice with each other? I wonder what is behind that question, but would you like to take that?
Yeah, I can. So, go ahead, Amit. Yeah.
Yeah. So one is these communities do need moderation, right? If you think about an open network, right? like an internet, for example, right? Anybody can say anything. Any person can point, and that comes with the territory of freedom of speech and choice and all that, right? Which means it's an open community. But when we look at business ecosystems, it requires a little bit of moderation. And that's where WorkSpan has made a point that these partnering communities need to be led in a model where either it is a host-led, like a Microsoft-led community, or a partner-led community. And in cases where communities like Intel and VMware, for example, they decide they want to co-lead a community, but there's some structure and some governance, right? And while there is the golden rule, do unto others what you would like to have done to you. I do feel like the community moderation aspect is important. That there is, the moment you join, the rules are there. You click in and say, hey, I agree to abide by the community rules. And if the community rule says, you behave this way, then I think also the leaders, the early people who come into the community establish those norms. But there is a place where if somebody does not follow the norms, that they will be removed from the community. So there's that threat that is there to kind of ensure that people behave in that particular way. Dan, I'm interested in your feedback as well.
Yeah. I think my mind went in a very different direction. I think like a negotiation is designed to be uncomfortable, right? I mean, academically, if you sat through a class on how to become a trained negotiator, a negotiation is designed to put two parties in a position of discomfort to really so they can bring forward what their needs are, and more importantly, what their needs are not. And I think ineffective negotiations are when you hold back too much and you keep too much of your needs in your back pocket, thinking you can slip them in at some point in time in the negotiation, which we all know generally really never works out very well. So I think to answer the question directly, I think be upfront about what your organization needs and be upfront about your expectations of partnerships as you forge new relationships with new organizations. And be okay to say, you know what, it seems like we're misaligned here. We have, there's always an alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's okay to kind of early in the conversation come to consensus and say, what we need from each other is too far off. This is an investable relationship that we should continue to pursue. But when I think you're more transparent up front about what you need, and you don't hold those cards in your back pocket, I think you actually tend to have really powerful conversations from the start. Not always comfortable, but effective conversations from the start to say, oh, you know what? Wow, we do that, or that's an area of investment that we are focusing in, or something that we'd very much like to undertake, but we've been looking for a strategic relationship for somebody who's willing to take this leap with us. I think that sets the stage for a very confident negotiation, not always comfortable, but a very confident negotiation to proceed. And I look at these relationships and their initial point of engagement just like that. Just put it out on the table, put yourself out on the table, and make sure your organizations are aligned in what your common objectives and goals are. And you'll see magical things unfold when that happens, and you'll see kind of abrupt transitions when it doesn't that are probably the intended outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Great advice.
What a fantastic answer.
Great. Here's another question that has come in. Intel and VMware co-fund channels to accelerate deployments. What are the other ways alliances and channels can work together in partner ecosystems?
Yeah, I'll take one. And Dan, if you can bring some P2P examples from Embrace or from Adobe, that would be great as well. So the one that I've commonly seen is joint solutioning. So it's very common for alliance partners to come in and create a joint technology solution or a joint offering in the market. So imagine an alliance partner like a hyperscale partner like Microsoft working with SAP, for example, or a GSI, for example, working with another technology partner, let's say like a Dell, for example, or an HPE, right? So they create and package a solution. And oftentimes what happens is they don't have the reach or the scale to reach everybody in the market, and they need to use the channel network to actually have the last mile to the partner. So I see alliances routinely put joint solutions out, and Cisco does that really, really well, put joint solutions out there, and then use the largest network of channel partners to actually distribute this well. So joint solutioning and then reselling. And then, of course, is the use case that we talked about before with Intel and VMware, where they pool their funds together. And in this case, they're co-funding POC deployments. Dan?
Yeah, that was actually, my mind went kind of where your commentary tailed off on funding. You'd be surprised when in a strategic relationship, an organization's willingness to commit resources to something that another organization can bring to the table. And you think about what we've seen unfold in this with SAP Embrace and with Adobe is if they want to go after a new stack or new capability in their portfolio, they have two options: go buy a company or go invest in an organization that's already built what they need. And invest in that relationship. Microsoft very much does the same thing, right? We have hard money investments that we make to our partners all the time. We also have non-financial resources that we can give to partners. Let's say that we have an ISV who's struggling in building their marketing muscle, right? We have go-to-market benefits that we can use to bolster that partner's market presence when they're an early stage GTM and can help them land with a splash in market when they start to launch their products initially. So I'd say my answer to the question is be blunt about what you need and don't be afraid to ask for money or resources. I think you'd be surprised at how many organizations are willing to commit hard money dollars to a partner organization when their other option is go acquire a firm that does what they need, which is a both time intensive in terms of resources involved to structure those types of acquisitions and very, very capital intensive. Many times for a small percentage of the capital, they could say, hey, this is an area where we need you to invest, and we're willing to put hard money on the line for you to pursue that investment for this relationship to be able to succeed.
Great, thank you. We had a number of other questions come in as well. How do you track value coming back to Microsoft from P2P in cases where Microsoft just gets out of the way, in quotes?
Yeah, great. I'll kick off with that one. I think I know where that was directed. For us, the platform that we have created is designed for partners to harness the computing and storage power of Azure to be able to harness the opportunities built on top of our business applications ecosystem, our office productivity ecosystem, our modern commerce ecosystems. All of those things are really designed to tell partners, hey, look, come here with your idea, build your solution, build your intellectual property on top of these offerings. They can either add value-added services like plugins that we see in Office and Dynamics, or be able to create tech that doesn't need a mainframe infrastructure in your organization to be able to run by putting it on our cloud, and then embracing an SI community to be able to deploy those solutions globally and to be able to leverage their massive support resources to keep those things alive in production environments. That obviously, those drive resource utilization in Microsoft's Azure cloud stack. So it is in our best interest for our partners to come and say, you have an enticing platform, you have a platform that meets the needs and demands of what my organization is for the ideas that we have of intellectual property that we can build on top of, or service offerings that will leverage directly to our customers. And in those cases, it is Microsoft's joy to see those partners succeed without necessarily needing our help. Many partners, thousands of partners do this every day. And that's kind of an assurance to Microsoft that says we have delivered a platform that is valuable, a platform that is scalable, and a platform that is simple and intuitive to use, that our partners can be able to create value-added services on top of it without needing a lot of guidance and advice. Obviously, there's areas where that story doesn't always ring that true, right? We've put a lot of investment in our Dynamics community to try to overcome where that ecosystem was 5 years ago, and we've seen demonstrable growth in it in the last half decade. And so in those cases, really, it's the feedback when the partners and customers bring Microsoft in those discussions, they're generally giving us feedback and saying, this platform, these promises that you've offered us are actually really difficult to bring to fruition. We take that feedback, iterate, and try to improve the service offering that we have in market so that our partners can take advantage of it without needing to be guided through it. So I think it is, there's a give take here. But ultimately, Microsoft is trying to determine, have we created an incremental unit of value with every capability that we deploy on top of our platform suite? And that manifests itself in partner and customer utilization 100%. Whether Microsoft needs to be at that table or not, we can see if value is being delivered to the industry through the things that we provide.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. On your last slide, you mentioned ramping up collaborative teams despite COVID-19. Any challenges with this?
Amit, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I feel like people have been on many conference calls on Microsoft Teams and other tools where the nature of collaboration has always been more about kind of getting together and getting to do things, right? What we see ourselves as doing in a in a post-COVID. And I've seen a lot of customers, especially those who do joint business planning with partners, for example, that used to be kind of get together in a room, hopefully on a partner day or your each other's offices, and get there and have a day to actually do these kinds of joint planning sessions. And then joint reviews and stuff like that, like a QBR, for example. Or these days with COVID-19, the pipelines are moving so fast that people need to really literally jointly assess them together. So we see that dynamic come in. So you not only need collaboration tools like where you can get together, like where we are doing right now, but you actually need a digital work to be performed in a collaborative way. So that's the aspect that we are talking about. That the next level of productivity in this time is not only going to come from video collaboration, but more importantly, process collaboration and moving the work forward.
Yep. It's interesting. I was just having this conversation with the event team here as we were in the green room leading up to this call. And so I on the other side of the business, I support inspire.microsoft.com, which is our previously known as our Worldwide Partner Conference. And we had an open discussion about how is it hard to transition these big events from physical to digital. And it is. I mean, as everybody would expect on this call, it's incredibly hard to do. It takes a machine of production studios to put these things together. And the point to this question is that if you've ever been to our partner conference, which is now in Las Vegas, or this year will be online, it's a show, right? It's a big, impressive, professionally produced show, and we get feedback from the event that says, the show is impressive. It's visually stunning. The demos are good. We really like what your executives have to say. But the majority of the feedback that comes in about the event is that it's not about the show. It's about the collaboration. It's about the discussions that happen in the hallways and the discussions that happen at the breakfast tables and lunchroom tables, where you're just randomly sit next to somebody, a leader from another organization that you've never met. And you end up realizing that you have more in common than you thought. And you switch cell phone numbers or shoot each other a text, or you take a picture of each other's business card. And a relationship is that you walked into breakfast and you had nothing. And you walked out of breakfast and you had something that had very, very tangible value, future value sitting in front of it. Trying to bring that into a digital ecosystem in a post-COVID world is really difficult to do. Trying to bring together two organizations that have never met and have that kind of happenstance breakfast conversation that led to a multi-million-dollar deal 6 months later is very, very difficult to do. And so you can't do it without a platform, right? So we're envisioning now and saying, well, let's start with something, because we have nothing today. We need to start with at least providing, for lack of a better term, the breakfast table. And let's figure out ways to bring the right people to that table to have the right conversations, even if they wouldn't have naturally met on their own.
Well said, Dan. I'm going to let the WorkSpan folks know that they are the new breakfast table.
That's great. We need that breakfast table. It's a huge part of the community, right?
Yep.
That's great. I know that we are running tight on time, but you did have a flurry of questions come in. Are traditional agreement structures used for these ecosystem partnerships? So a question about deal structure. Are traditional agreement structures used for these ecosystem partnerships?
Yeah, I'll give my observation, and Dan, feel free to add some. So we do see, when you structure a partner-to-partner community, that the leader of the community organizes the first, draft of a agreement, right? If you think about it, the overall terms of the community is there. But besides that, not really. What really happens is the usual business relationships that you have, the co-sell agreements or the teaming agreements or the innovation agreements or the marketing agreements you have between partners is what takes over. So we fundamentally, not much has changed, but what has changed is when you get into a P2P community, you need to kind of agree on common terms and common, think of this as a membership agreement to the community, if you will. Dan?
Yeah, without getting too specific, I think that was really well put. I think as far as we know that companies, when structuring deals together, will always have custom agreements in the way they want to build things, and we don't envision creating kind of rigid structure that says this is how it must be done. Here's a kind of boilerplate template. We envision more to say, look, we can enable the sharing and collaboration of files, and however your own respective legal teams need to come together to formulate kind of the boundaries of what can and can't happen in the structure of these deals. Will enable a place for those conversations and that type of collateral to be shared and discussed. But we wouldn't be prescriptive on exactly how to do it.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. Dan and Amit, thanks for being with us today. You've given us a lot to consider, a lot to think about. Love the transparency and the great advice you've provided. Thanks for closing out our program. It was great to be with you.